Hey everyone, welcome back to our Forgotten Gate project. This is the first part of the texturing, so make sure you already watched the modeling part. You will find the links in the description below. Today we will add a rune to our portal and start some procedural texturing, so let's go! Let's start by creating our rune. Position the cursor around where we want it to be by pressing Shift right click and add a plane using Shift A. Make sure to name things properly to keep your project organized. Now, in edit mode, we will rotate the plane by 90 degrees on the x-axis. To stick our rune to the portal, we will use a modifier called shrink wrap. It will cast our rune on the target object surface, in our case, the portal. Okay, now we can model our rune. You can go for anything you want. I decided to make this rune. Let's rescale our mesh on the x-axis and we will basically create the shape of our rune by rescaling. We will add two edge loops by pressing CTRL R because our rune separates into 3 parts. Then we will extrude each individual part with the same length. Select one part and translate it to one side. You can see the translation distance on the top left corner, so you can replicate it to the opposite side. Now we will just try to harmonize the width of our rune. You don't need to worry too much about it, as the camera won't be that close. We will just clean up the topology by dissolving some edges. To do so, just select them and press X. Then we will join these two vertices by pressing J. Okay, we will finally add the solidify modifier to give some thickness to the rune. Change few parameters like the offset if it is the wrong direction. I just changed the shade to smooth by right clicking. To fix this out shading, just go with the Object Data Properties panel. There is a nice option called Auto Smooth that will determine whether or not it should apply the smooth shading to the edges based on their angles. Now let's add some textures to this gray scene. We will use procedural texturing using nodes inside Blender, and we will start with the ground, so let's select it. To have more focus on it and hide everything else, you can press Shift H to only show what you selected. To unhide everything, don't worry, just press Alt H. To do some texturing, we will use new tools and windows that are not displayed in the default layout we are currently on, but there is a preset workspace called Shading that is made for what we want. With our ground selected, we will click on the new button to create a new material that we will call ground_matte. We will need some space on this node windows, so increase its size and zoom out. First, press Shift A and let's add a nose texture for the mud. Now make sure you activated the add-on called Node Wrangler. Just go in Preferences, in Add-ons, search for Node Wrangler and check it. Now, by holding Ctrl Shift and left click on the node texture, we will be able to display the output of our node on our ground and see exactly what we are doing. But for now, let's reset our graph. As you can see on our materials here, we have some stretching on the side because our vertices are not proportionally distributed, but we can fix it by adding Shift A, the input node called texture coordinate. Now link object output to the vector input of our noise texture, et voilà! So now we can configure properly our noise texture. In my case, I need to decrease the scale. We can tweak options until we are happy with the result. Once we have done, we don't want our texture to be black and white, we want it to be green and brown, so let's use a color ramp that will remap our two colors to fit our needs. We can't really see the mud, so we slide the brown color closer to the other one to increase how fast it goes from green to brown. Also, let's put the roughness to the max because the ground is not really shiny. Remember that you can still play with parameters after these steps. Okay, so now let's focus on the grass texture. Same here, select the grass and create a new material that we will call grass_matte. This material will be a bit more interesting. Like the first one, we add the texture coordinate. We want our grass to have a gradient that goes from dark green at the base to a light green. For this, we will discover another nice node texture. Say hi to the gradient texture. I've made a little mistake here as I took generated output, which is in fact the default behavior if you don't use the texture coordinate node. I recommend to use the object output, but in my case it won't affect too much the end result. Maybe I will explain the differences between the two if some of you ask me in the comments. Don't forget to use Ctrl Shift left click to display step by step what you're doing. To have a better understanding of your procedural textures, it is useful to add simple geometry. Apply the texture and have a look. As you can see, the gradient is directed the wrong way, so let's fix it. We will use the mapping node. Then we will adjust the Y rotation to 90 degrees. Now we have our gradient that goes correctly from black at the base to white at the top. So if we have a look to our grass, we should see exactly what we wanted. Great! Now we have a black and white grass. Let's add some colors the same way as before, add a color ramp and let's get the right colors. Our grass starts now to have a really nice look. You can tweak the different parameters until you are happy with the result. The gradient texture is nice, but now it could feel a bit too linear, right? What we could do to improve that is to blend the nose texture we saw earlier with this texture. Let's do it. So, add the nose texture and in the converter section, add a math node. Now we will take the fact outputs of our two textures as inputs and get the math output in the color ramp input. It can be a bit difficult to predict the display output of the math node, so I recommend to try different settings. I found that dividing the gradient input by the nose texture worked pretty well. A little explanation of the math behind the textures. The black output corresponds to 0, while the white corresponds to 1. In our case, the black part of our gradient texture is at the base, and because 0 divided by anything equals 0, the base of the grass will stay black. But the more we go to the white part of the gradient texture, the more the nose texture will affect the display. As we can see on our cube, the result feels a bit more natural. Now we can just play around with the scale until we are happy. Let's get rid of the cube and see how our scene looks like now with these two textures. Just press Alt-H to unhide everything. Oh, well, this is maybe too bright. I should put my sunglasses on. I just forgot to modify the specularity and the roughness of the grass. Hey, we are done for this part. I think the next video will be the last one for this tutorial. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe. You can also leave a comment in the commentary section below, and I will see you in the next episode.